Welcome to the Festival of Entrepreneurs, recorded live at the NEC in Birmingham. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the most incredible founders, investors, and business leaders who joined us this year.
My name's Andrew, and we're going to talk about today what people need to do to scale. So we're joined by three guests. We'll do very, very brief introductions. I say my name's Andrew. I've worked in software and software as a service for the last 20 years and been through the start, scale, and exit journey a couple of times. That's about as much as I'm going to say, hopefully. So, Jeanette, do you want to kick us off?
Well, isn't it great being here, everyone? Festival of Entrepreneurs, we've arrived, everyone. But no, it's great to be here. My background is in the travel industry. So I was the MD of the emerging markets for 2 years, the CEO of the travel division for Saga. And I jumped out with my entrepreneurial journey. So today I'm the founder of our business, Brave, Bold, Brilliant. Come and see us over there near the main stage. And we're here working with businesses to help scale up your business, your leadership skills, and your team. So we do a bunch of other stuff, but essentially I guess I'm corporate CEO turned entrepreneur, so I see both sides of the table. But I will pass over to Dominic.
Thank you. Yeah, Dominic, I co-founded a business called Social Chain in 2013, which is a social media marketing company. Scaled that to 750 people across the world. Worked with some of the biggest brands like Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, TikTok, Amazon, and basically was one of the first social media companies. Exited that business in August 2020, and then since then I've been running an investment firm called Fearless, where we invest and scale in early stage companies to help them grow. And alongside that, we have an education business where we help young people, young businesses scale their company or get into jobs for the first time.
Hi, I'm Lucy Whittington, and my business is Inspired Business Marketing. I am a go-to-market consultant, and I am usually the person that sits next to the founder and helps them navigate what to do when they're ready to take things to market. So one of the things I've done, I was like second hire at Xero in the UK. I helped launch that into the UK. I've worked with lots of other software and service businesses, helping them navigate what to do and how to think differently when they've got to hand stuff over to someone else selling their baby.
Thank you, guys. So we're going to cover 3 topics today, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. And the question that we're going to start with, which was sort of covered in the keynote a little bit, is around mindset and the UK's approach to going big and scaling. So I think, Dom, we'll start with you. Do you think, how do we compare to the rest of the world? Do we have the right appetite, the right approach to scaling?
No, I don't think we do. I think when we look at the world, we look at things through a UK-centered mindset, which is correct because we are here. But when you go to the US, for example, they don't even really consider the UK as a main market. They see it as an afterthought. The best businesses I've seen in the UK that have got the really aggressive mindset, and don't get me wrong, the UK has some fantastic assets. It's got great talent. It's got great businesses, great tech, great financial services. The big businesses and the best founders that I see are the ones that I think they won from a global perspective. So, great example, Barney, who's the founder of Clio, one of the fastest growing fintechs at the moment. The UK-based business, London-based business, but straight away realised the opportunity for their business was in the US, not in the UK. So straight away launched in the US and grew the market there. So we obviously, given language, we've got so much transferable skill set with the US, and which is a much bigger market. So from my perspective, when I speak to founders, what I want to encourage them is that if you've built something which is right for someone in the UK, it's also probably right as a product for someone in the US or in Europe as well. So the quicker you can expand and grow the business in an international environment, the more diversity you can get, the better your business will be.
So can you just add a follow-up on that? So would you, if somebody came to you and said, okay, I've got a business that I think can scale globally, would you say, look east to Europe, or would you automatically go, look west to the US?
Well, it depends. So I'm an investor in a business called Transreport, which is a mobility business which helps people who have got disabilities travel easier. And their biggest second market is Japan. And that's for many factors, mainly due to aging population. But straight away, they looked at their product and went, okay, where else could this business work? And Japan was the second market. I've got a friend who's just exited a business called Member, which was a gym-based business. Again, their second market was Japan and Korea. So I don't necessarily think you should straight away look at the US. You should look at the problem your business solves and go, actually, where else is this applicable? And that might lead you to some market which, for different reasons, is absolutely perfect for you.
And do you think that, but almost instantly, the people are thinking beyond the UK?
I think that's the right thing to do. You know, the UK market is relatively small and it is quite competitive. And and buying decisions are now moving out of the UK. So I do think that if you have a business, you should look at internationally as soon as possible. And that doesn't necessarily mean the US, so it doesn't necessarily mean Europe, but it means just having that mindset to think, actually, my ideal customer profile isn't just the business which is near me in the UK, it's also somewhere else in the world.
So Jeanette, how does that reflect what you've been learning?
Yeah, I mean, I've done lots of international mergers and acquisitions, from buying the market leader in Brazil for 600 million for TUI to, doing big deals in China. And I agree. I think there's a mindset around setting your business up from the start so it is scalable and can be global, right? And a lot of that is tech, obviously. But what I would say is going international is not easy. It depends on the market you choose. So you have to understand the cultural differences. You have to understand the different legislation, etc. So I think absolutely the mindset should be, how could I potentially take this global if I choose to, put the right foundations in at the beginning, but then make sure when you're looking at assessing the markets, you do your homework, you do your due diligence, and you narrow it down based on where the customer demand is, where there's a great fit. But then do not underestimate the time it takes. Even in the US, it's so different doing business in the US than it is doing in the UK. Just because we share a language does not mean it's the same. So yeah, some warnings there, but yeah, absolutely mindset for growth.
And do you think that mindset or that approach can become sort of distracting in the very early stages? Is that a risk, do you think?
Yeah. We've been.
I'm going to go see you. How to become a billionaire, I'm off.
That's more than 9 steps round to there, though.
I think. Sorry, say me the question again. Sorry.
Just in terms of that approach, could that be potentially quite risky at very early stage?
Yeah, you've got to be careful, haven't you? You've got to put the foundations in, because as entrepreneurs, I think one of our challenges is that we get excited by the shiny penny. I mean, how many people have said, "Oh, I love that, I've got a great idea, let's go over here." And that's fantastic, because we look for opportunities naturally. The downside is that you don't finish anything properly. So I always say you need to apply almost like a 70-20-10 approach. 70% your core business, get that going, get that working really well. 20%, what's the next market or the next product that you're bringing in? And then 10% might be a little bit around trial and just testing some new stuff. But don't get, seduced too much by the shiny penny, because then you'll find that you haven't put the foundations in place in order to scale.
I think that point around foundations is really important. Just because you are based in the UK, for example, doesn't mean the product you should build should be for the UK to start off with. So that market research should be done from day one, because actually you might end up getting stuck in a market where your product's right, but the customer demand is wrong. So another example, I'm working with a business which does referencing. Referencing in the UK is very different to referencing in the US or in Europe, because in the UK it's seen as a tick box, while in the US it's seen as a piece around quality of hire. So the viewpoint in the US is much different than the UK, and they're stuck in the UK mindset of, actually, we just need to tick a box that this person's got 2 references from their previous jobs, while in other markets it's like, actually, we want to speak to their previous employers to know how good they were. So they are now stuck because they've built a great product, but the UK customer base wants it for a certain reason. So that mindset piece and the foundation piece can be done even in the product development stage, not just in the go-to-market stage.
And Lucy, you spend a lot of time with probably smaller organisations, those growing up to like 1 to 10 million. Do you see that mindset reflected in the founders that you work with? Is it a very much UK small? Is it big? How does that work for you?
A lot of them, it's something that would be one of those transferable things that you think about. I find a lot of founders are reluctant to kind of own their expertise and to stand out with that. I think that's something that if you've created a category or you've got a new product or you've got something that you really can talk to solving a problem about, the earlier you become vocal about that and you kind of own that story and that solution, then it makes it a lot easier to expand. But they don't necessarily think. I think it's that thing of like, what can we do next and what can we do right now? And, with campaigns, it's always that balance of, what are we doing tactically because we need to sell things right now and create our revenue, but then having like in parallel the strategic stuff of like, well, where are we going with this? Where can we take it? And it is very easy to just become distracted by what are we going to do for our revenue next month, next quarter, next year, without having that bigger vision running alongside that. And I think often I work with people who are thinking about their exit not necessarily their expansion, and they're not realizing that the two could well be related and really help. So a lot of startups now are already told when they're pitching or putting their business plan together, it's like, who are you going to sell this to, rather than necessarily like, how are you going to grow it in the meantime, and you might not need to sell it, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, and Lucy makes a really important point there, because I felt guilty of that. So I set the business up straight away as like, how are we going to sell this business? And actually now, if I think about where a social media agency with social media assets would be valued now versus when I sold the business 5 years ago, it's much more valuable now because the world has adopted social media more than it did 5 years ago. So I was very guilty of that I was so far down the line of raising investment and exiting that actually the longevity of the business would have been more valuable now. So it's really important, and I think coming back to the mindset approach, is that young entrepreneurs, they think in a very, they want to get the first exit, they want to see the success, they want to see the valuations, they want to see the rise, rather than actually thinking this business could be here for 20, 30, 40 years and I could build a legacy and expand internationally. I don't need to get a quick buck.
So back to this mindset, because that's really interesting, because one of the things I think is that an exit's an outcome of what you do, it's not what you do. So I don't think I've ever met a really great founder. I've met a few. They were always obsessed by a passion or doing something, never the exit. The exit was always the outcome. Does that make sense? Is that fair? Have you?
It isn't, I can speak from my experience as a 26-year-old boy when someone dangles money in front of you that you've never experienced in your life. The passion and what you love suddenly goes away. And that's just the basis.
Well, to be fair, I had the same at 32.
Yeah.
But I was just knackered. And to be fair, and people dangle a check in front of you, go, actually, I don't have to worry about getting out with the kids. I can take the money. But looking back now, so I exited 9 years ago. I don't regret leaving, but I sort of still wish I had the business now, because it would be worth 10 times more.
People always
adding that much more
people
value.
ask me what you're going to do afterwards. I go, I'll start another business.
Well,
and that's the most stupid point. I go to people, if you're going to sell this business to start another business, which is exactly the same as the business you're doing right now, just do the thing you're doing right now.
And we'll come back to this, Jeanette, because this is one of the things we're going to talk
about. But entrepreneurs get bored.
That's the problem, yeah. We've got very short attention spans, haven't we?
So let's come around a bit. We'll come back to the exit thing and the life beyond that, because I think that's really important. We'll come back to that in a bit. But let's just talk about, if, say, a company decides to scale, I think there are two questions I'm interested in. Do you think there's a point, coming back to the shiny things bit, is there a point where you can say, actually, we're now ready to scale? So with my product hat on, and I'm software as a service and tech, there is absolutely a point where you go, yeah, now it's ready to scale. But do you see there are points in a business life where you go, actually, we're too small, or it's not right, or now it's yes? And then once you decide that, what are the things that can really trip you up? We've talked a little bit about foundational things, but could we draw a bit more colour around what are those foundational things that if you don't have them, you will stall or fail or take longer than you ideally should? Do you want to kick us off, Jeanette, on that?
Yeah, I think when you're looking to scale, at what point do you scale? There's two approaches, really, and I advise a lot of businesses globally on exits. I've helped businesses exit, sell, I've helped them merge, do commercial deals, the whole thing, right? So I think when we talk about exit, it doesn't necessarily mean selling, right? There are multiple ways to exit a business. You may stay on as a chairman, you may sell part of the shareholder. There's lots of different ways. But when you're looking at scaling and when is the right time, I think there's two approaches. There's one, have a plan, right? Even if it's a simple business plan. Now, the plan will never come to exactly as you plan it, right? But at least it keeps you sort of focused on what that 5-year journey may look like, that 3-year journey. It might only be a 2-year plan, but have some kind of plan so you know your numbers, you know what the strategic drivers for your growth are, and you are working towards them, right? So if you have that, you will have some trigger points around when you need more investment, when you're going to scale up, etc. Right? That's one way. The second way is when opportunity comes knocking, right? Which you cannot always predict. So then you have to be able to assess it and go, okay, do we go for this and use it as a catalyst for growth, or do we not? What's involved? And I think the most important thing as a founder is have a great coach, have a mentor, have someone in your life that can give you that great sounding board to bounce these ideas off, because it is very lonely as a founder. It's very lonely as a corporate CEO as well, let me tell you. So I think, to me, there's the plan, but then there's the opportunities, and actually having the right people around you to make solid decisions and not get seduced by the quick buck necessarily, because you might actually be selling too early or giving away some equity too early. So you need the right people in your corner, I would say.
Yeah, I think to extend that point, the limiting factor that I've always seen is management capacity. And that, to that point exactly, when you've got people around you who operationally, think about a US market, yeah? So either a founder has to go to the US market because they become the beacon of culture and they become the driving force in that area, or someone you hire and there becomes a part owner, whatever. You need to make sure you have that person every single day who wakes up and thinks about either the new market, or if you're developing a new product, wakes up every single day and thinks about the new product. Because without accountability and ownership, things never succeed, because you need to be on, there's a different relationship between someone who owns the business and has equity and has an interest than someone who's in the team as maybe hired as a head of sales. So that for me is really important. And so management capacity then actually becomes about are the senior team in the right mindset and the right position to be able to focus on another market without, we always used to say, you want to reach for the apple without dropping the pie. So it is actually is the extension into a new area or a new product or a new market going to disrupt core business. And if it's going to disrupt core business, are you going to lose everything, or are you going to actually make it better? So weighing up that kind of balance was always important. So for me, it always comes down to someone said to me once in business, you've got two problems. Number one is people problems, so making sure you've got the right people around you and the people are doing the right thing. And the second problem is how long it takes you to realize you only have one problem, which is people. So that's what it comes down to for me. So Emily, who's sat here, does all our recruitment and for me, making sure you've got the right people around you is the most important part. And that's from a personal perspective as well as like mentors and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucy, so you've worked with quite a few like organisations that are scaling. What are the things that you've seen that you think hold organisations back when you think they may be ready to go?
Quite often it's the founder, because they've got to change their role or relinquish what they do, or they've got to make some hires. And so it does come back to people and having that trust. But it's also, who they need to be. So up until this point, they might have worn a number of hats, and now maybe they just have to wear one hat, or maybe they haven't worked out which hat they wear best and who to hire around them. So I think there's that side of it. And it's that trust. It's the trust of letting go, letting other people do what was your job for you. But like you say, it's not necessarily always their business. Sometimes it is if they've got equity and things like that. But it's knowing when to take that leap. And it's a bit like anything. It's never necessarily the right time. And it's understanding whether you've got the capacity as well to deal with it. So not only the management side of things, but the delivery side of things. That's usually where I've seen things go a bit wonky.
So on that instance, what's the downside, just talk downside a little bit, of going too quick?
I mean, you time and capital used to be, in my experience, time and capital was a trade-off. So the quicker you want to go, the more capital you have to raise, therefore the more equity you lose. So for me, that was the mechanism. So you need to raise a lot of money. That adds pressure in terms of actually then wanting the return and the expectation of investors on your board. The other problem about going too quick is actually, as you said there, you were knackered. The burnout perspective, from a founder perspective, if the founder wants to leave and the founder wants to exit the business, you can see how things change. So I think the burnout piece is very, very real. Because if you set the business up and you think, okay, I'm knackered, I want to get out, and actually, like I said there in my previous example, the opportunity for owning social media assets is more valuable now than it was 10 years ago, you actually might miss the actual optimal value of the business. So therefore you lose out on cash. Yep. So there's a lot of factors to it, but they're the two main things for me.
And so we talked a little bit about, Lucy mentioned it there, and Jeanette, I'd love to hear your thoughts on almost like the founder versus CEO type thing. When does that switch happen? What does it look like? How challenging is it?
It's a really good question, actually, because, everyone is different. There is no one magic solution or formula, unfortunately, but it is a massive step change. And what I always say, when you're scaling up or you're making a pivotal change in the business, there's always three aspects. Doesn't matter what business you're in, what sector you're in. The first one is leading yourself. So kind of where are you in your headspace? What role do you want to play in the business? Are you ready to let go of your baby, potentially? or not, as the case may be. The second one is leading your teams to the point, you've got to have what has got you to one level will not get you to the next level. And then, of course, there's a lead in the business, the strategy, the growth. So I think that shift from being a founder where you're literally the chief bottle washer, cleaner, FD, marketing director in the early years, you're used to having control. And, to Lucy's point, you've got to let go to grow because you become the blocker, but you've got to be ready and have the right infrastructure around you, the right team. So what's got you here will not get you to where you want to be. But I think you've got to dig deep and really also, I would say, outside of the business, think about your broader life purpose. Where does this fit in with where you are in life? Do you want to be working 24/7 for the next 10 years? Or do you want to, have a different approach to your life overall? Where does it fit into with financial? So I think you've got to look at the bigger purpose that you have as well, because young founders are one thing, but as you get a bit older, things do change. In your 40s, your 50s, you want different things. And you're in a different financial position. So I think also think about personally, what do you want? Because that's also a big part of the journey. Business is one thing, but our life is something else. So, I would just say pay attention to those things.
That's a great, it definitely makes a difference.
What Lucy said there was probably the most important thing, was just understanding where the founder fits in afterwards. So like the self-analysis you have to do to understand where you can add the most value in the business. So from my perspective, it's really easy because at 19 years old, I could walk into a room and tell people I was a social media expert and I was the best at it. And that was a boardroom and CEOs, and they believed me because that's what social media was. But if someone was a CEO of a fintech business, they could not walk into a bank after 2 years and say, I'm an expert in finance. So from my perspective, it's very, very easy because I knew that social media and our product was the area where I would continue to be the domain authority. So around me, I could build a team of people who were better at finance, who were better at marketing, who were better at operations. So from my perspective, it's really, really easy. So what I always say to founders is actually understand where your unique value proposition can sit, be it in sales, be it in growth, be it in some areas. Sometimes it's CFO, sometimes it's brand. And you dominate that area and you have your value there. And if that's not CEO, because CEO as a skill set is a skill, and it is the much better people out there than me and much better people out there who have got experience in scaling companies, let them do that and you focus on the area you can add unique value. Because you as a founder will always have an area which is unique and special to you.
Go on, Luce, anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I think when that works well, it works brilliantly. And it goes back to what you were saying as well about what do you want out of your life as well as in your business. I mean, I like to enjoy what I'm doing and I like to feel that I'm valued for my skills, and I don't want to be anywhere where that isn't happening. And quite often founders have built themselves a job that they don't actually want. But now they're there, they don't necessarily want to give up some of those things. And I think that is really important, that if you're not constantly evaluating that or realizing that someone else could help you or someone else could do that better or someone else could do it alongside you. It's not necessarily replacing you always. It's just about who can do it with you.
I think the biggest thing I see is that CEOs or founders typically don't let people do it.
Well, the issue you need when you start a business is you need to be slightly delusional and slightly egotistical. Because to think you can do something that is very difficult and just start is a crazy aspect. So that comes in complete contradictory to what we're all saying here in terms of self-analysis, reading the room and understanding where you fit in. So actually that's the reason why, is because those two things are a complete contradiction with each other. Your ego versus self-awareness. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Probably coinciding with when they get a really good coach.
Yeah,
maybe.
You could put them in their place a little bit.
Correct.
So I want to leave time for questions, but I just want to cover off this life after exit stuff, because it's you and I talked about this the other day, so I'm not going to say anymore. Do you want to just go for it?
Yeah, I see this a lot. I advise a lot of businesses. I've exited businesses myself, and I think, very often, I'm actually interviewing Jeanette Barrett, who's the co-founder of Grenade, tomorrow, and she's been a guest on my podcast as well, Brave, Bold, Brilliant, so check out the podcast. But when Juliet was talking to me, she said she had this complete sense of loss and bereavement. They sold Grenade for 200 million, right? So it should have, you think it would be the happiest day of your life. Money in the bank, you've built this up, how amazing to have achieved an exit. But actually, what's your purpose post-exit? What are you going to do? And this is where a lot of founders, they're so focused on the deal and getting the deal over the line, which is amazing. They do not think about life post-exit. So again, it comes back partly to your broader life bit, but also, do you want to start another business maybe? Do you want to go down the portfolio route? Do you want to stay on as a non-exec director? There's lots of multiple options. But you've got to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And if you've been a passionate founder and you've built this business for 5-10 years and it has been everything, it's like losing a loved one. So, I think it's about paying attention to that earlier on in the, when you're going through DD and all of that, make sure you have considered that, because all of a sudden when you sell, emails stop, phone doesn't ring, and you're left going, what the hell? Why am I here? And you start having a bit of a crisis of confidence, even though you've got, X million in the bank. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say. And work with someone to help you. Get a mentor, get a coach, whoever it is. Get someone that maybe has been there and done it as well. I would recommend that can help you so that you can learn from their mistakes and avoid making them yourself. But life after exit does exist. There is life afterwards, but make sure you've given some thought to it so you don't feel bereft at the end, because it opens a whole new bunch of opportunities, right? But plan for that a little bit ahead of time. Don't wait till all of a sudden completion day, you've signed the papers, and then you're sitting there going, right, what do I do now?
Dom, anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, I did that because I started a business at 19, so I'd never had any previous experience of life, really. So like my entire life, I've been running a business, and what I think I craved was peace. Someone not to message me. And I remember literally the hour before I announced that I'd left, not that I was leaving, that I'd left and exited, I looked at my WhatsApps, and the top 20 people were all from work. Anyway, the next week, the messages, after you get the thank you, congratulations, all that kind of stuff, it just dies down and no one needs you anymore. You feel useless. And thankfully, the best thing I did was got my dog. So for the next 2 weeks, I literally taught my dog every single trick under the book. And because I was like, at least someone needs me. I was like, sit, roll over, jump, bark, etc. But I thought I craved that peace of like no one bothering me because I'd never had it. And I was in Spain. I sat on a beach for 2 weeks, and I just then put my mind to what should I do next. But the issue I had is I didn't know what I'd achieve, because for me every single day was the same, just a little bit different than the day before. And you never actually realize, oh my God, we built something that was this, and this is where it fits. So from my perspective, I had to do a lot of soul searching, because it felt like the first time, and all my friends had just gone through it after university when they left, like, what do I do now in my life? That's what I felt like. I felt like I just finished my university and gone, what am I going to do when I grow up? And I hadn't thought about it.
Excellent. Lucy, anything to add on that?
No, I just think it is really interesting, and the thread that you're hearing through that is it's always about change. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? When you're growing a business, you're starting up, who you are on day one of your business is not who you are on day 100 and day 1,000, and it's just about, getting people to help you through those transitions as well. I think, just in life and in general, we're all very good at trying to figure it out by ourselves, because we're the smart founder entrepreneur and we should know everything. And actually having mentors, being part of peer groups, having really good business friends or paying a coach, whatever, I can always tell when founders are more in tune or self-aware, and it makes the business work better. Yes, you still need that absolute ridiculous, the glass not even half full, it's like overflowing at all times, and we can do this. You do need that blind optimism, but having it in a way that can be channeled effectively, especially if you've got a team, is really, really helpful.
Thanks for watching this special episode from the Festival of Entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple: to help founders and business owners grow faster, think bigger, and take action. And if you were part of the event, thank you for joining us and being part of the community. And if you missed it, don't worry. We'll be back with even more ideas, inspiration, and opportunities to help you take your business to the next level. You can find out more and register for future events at festivalofentrepreneurs.co.uk.